It's the way you come across as well. If you're flustering and you don't have a plan, then that's obviously going to be, they're going to sense that from you. Very contagious. I always talk about positivity being contagious and negativity, but also your aura as well. So for me, I had a plan. They did get nervous. Don't worry, don't get me wrong. When I turned up on my own and I looked around me, see where the rest of the team was, I said, no, this is it.
All right, hello everybody. I'm super pumped today. I have maybe an unknown to the door-to-door space, but he's going to be known today after our podcast. I got Dean Stott with me. Dean, how are you?
I'm good, JP. Thank you for having me.
Great. Hey, so I was looking at all the stuff that you sent me, and I had to write it down just to make sure I get it right. So, 16 years British Special Forces, private sector security, world record holder, philanthropist, author of the book Relentless, speaker. You got a Netflix show coming out. You got this Next Word Challenge. And probably the most important thing that you didn't write down, but I know you meant it, is you're married to an amazing human. So the massive list of accomplishments is huge. So congrats to all that work, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
So I want to start. I want to start with the 16 years. And most of our following here is obviously US based, right? So SBS, right? Why don't you tell the world, educate the world of our followers at least, what the SBS is?
Yeah, so the SBS, so in the Special Forces, it's tiered. So you have tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1. So here in the US, probably more commonly known, the Navy SEALs are tier 2, the Rangers and the Green Berets. But then you have your tier 1 units, which is Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. So in the UK, what we have is the SBS and the SAS. So the SBS is the equivalent of SEAL Team 6, and the SAS is the equivalent of Delta Force. The only slightly difference is actually in the UK, our selection is joint. So they do it together. It's not its own separate entity. And so, yeah, I joined the SBS, but actually going back slightly, I was one of the first Army candidates to do so. So prior to me going on selection, you had to be a Royal Marine only to go to the Special Boat Service. And then everyone else had the option to go into the Special Air Service. But I'd spent 8 years in Commando reconnaissance. I was an instructor on the Commando course, and I was also now the senior diving instructor for the Army. And so I had a fondness and a love for the water. So the SBS was what attracted me to that. And so much to the disgust of my friends in the SAS, I volunteered for the SBS, and 200 candidates start on day one. And then 6 months later, there's 8 of us at the end. And yeah, I was one of the first guys to go. So, and I think now, if I'm correct, I'm thinking about 15% of the SBS come from the Army.
There's probably a plug to the Army there.
Yeah, definitely.
So now I watched a movie years ago with Russell Crowe, who went to some South American country to go rescue some oil executive or whatever. So when I hear of like private sector security, why don't you, again, educate people, other than movies that we see, what is it that, obviously you probably can't name names or countries or companies, but walk us through what you do there. Cause I know that's a big part of your life. And when I met your wife is how I met you. We talked a little bit about that crazy work that goes on there. And I think it's fascinating. It's sad that kind of work has to exist, but it's fascinating that there are world-class people like the two of you that can get that done. So educate us what that private sector work looks like.
Yeah, so I going back to in the Special Forces, I got injured after 16 years. I had a parachute accident. So
I'm gonna ask you about that here in a minute. So
when people with our skill sets, without sounding like Liam Neeson, the natural transition from that Special Forces community is the private security sector, and it's such a diverse industry. Normally, when I talk to people, when I'm speaking on the stage, I'm quite a stocky guy, muscly with tattoos, bald head. When I mention private security, I think they think I'm a doorman from the local nightclub. But, it is such a diverse industry. It's everything from surveillance, close protection, geopolitical analysis, investigatory stuff, coaching and mentoring. So just to give you a broad overview of some of the stuff I do, each phone call I would get would be very different in the role that I was doing and also geographically where it was. So one phone call I may get, can I take the UAE royal family super yacht from Barcelona to Maldives. Yeah, that's not a problem. The next phone call is, can you train the Kurdish Special Forces to fight ISIS and run a training program for that? In the next one, you may be taking a ultra high net worth or a top CEO or chairman to a country which may be a medium of high risk. There's the mining industry, there's the big sporting industry, the Formula Ones, the Olympics, the World Cups. I've been involved in all of them. So each time I get a phone call, it's something new. But really, it's just a stepping stone from the skill sets that we'd learned from our time in the Special Forces. What doesn't help matters, I call it Hollywood. It's the biceps, the bullets, and the bombs. Everyone thinks we're walking around with guns, and there's explosions everywhere. Actually, 25% of what we do in the Special Forces is that offensive action. It's what you see on the movies. But actually, 50% of what we do is where I really focus on is the hearts and minds and the support and influence. It's been embedded with locals, understanding the demographics, the politics, and the tribal influences. So that's the sort of approach we do in security, is look at the bigger picture.
So that was the cool part about your book is when by the way, you are currently in my reading of your book, you just got through Panama, I think. So I'm in the last 20 pages, and so I will finish it up, but crazy. But the first part of the book talks about some of these jobs that you had that I remember talking with your wife about the Benghazi piece, right? Where they made 13 Hours, the movie, right? And so it blew my mind when she's told me you were on the ground during that, doing something else, right? Because it was going crazy. Walk us through kind of like you fly into these areas where you just have all this network of people that can get you things and safe houses and places. And how do you develop that? Or is it just walk us through that process?
Yeah, so when I initially left the military, a lot of my friends were doing maritime security off the east coast of Somalia. There was a lot of work in that area. And then other guys were doing like 6-week rotations in Afghanistan and Iraq with the oil and gas sector. For me, I always wanted to find a niche within industry, something that was unique and not been really covered yet. And strange enough, you mentioned about that Russell Crowe movie. That company that's based on employed me on my very first task to go to Libya and help set up the British embassy in Benghazi during the Arab Spring. So this is May 2011. And as soon as I got there, I realized that the Libyans didn't want it to be another Afghan and Iraq. Once Gaddafi had fallen, they wanted control. But there was a lot of NGOs, there was a lot of oil and gas, there was a lot of security companies. And I was just sitting, listening on the periphery, watching these guys, sell these crisis management and evacuation plans to the oil and gas for 6-7 figure sums. When you scrape the surface, there was actually nothing in place, which was quite worrying to me. So I thought, well, maybe I capitalize on that. So I flew back to UK 2 weeks later. Lana gave birth to our daughter, Molly, our first child. And I said, I have an idea. So I went back in, and there was a huge proliferation of weapons at the time in Libya because it was still at the height of the Arab Spring. And so I took advantage of that. I bought 30 weapons on the black market and I buried them between Tunis and Egypt. And I just designed my own evacuation plans. I put communication, comms kit in there, I put money there, just stuff that I'd used in my time in the military. And my mindset is fast forward a few years' time, if there is a crisis, you can't come in with weapons, but you can cross the borders. And there's safe houses that I'd recce, there's security drivers that I know, and I just built up a network. And then if I need the weapons, at least I know where they are. And so I sold that. We lived in Aberdeen, which is the oil and gas capital of Europe, and I sold that retainer to a few of the oil and gas companies, and actually really just forgot about it. I just let that just tick over. And then I was doing all these other jobs, which I just previously mentioned. But I just finished the London Olympics in 2012, and I flew out to Benghazi on another task. And as you rightly touched there, September 11th, 2012, when your American ambassador got killed, it was all going off in Benghazi. I still didn't know what was going on at the time. I just knew there was trouble. The information was slowly coming to us. But I was asked if I could get a German oil company, KCA Deutag, 8 engineers from Benghazi back to Tripoli. And so that's what I did. But rather than just going on the coastal road straight back to Tripoli, what you have to factor in Libya, there's 167 tribes. And so taking people from Benghazi, we weren't the actual risk, but taking the drivers from Benghazi to Tripoli could cause us some issues going through Misrata and Tripoli. So I pushed south to a safe house that we had in Zella, and we just stayed there for 36 hours. And by that time, we were just getting all the information as everything was unfolding in Benghazi, the bigger picture. And then whilst we were doing that, I had drivers coming in from Tripoli, unbeknown to the drivers in Benghazi and unbeknown to the engineers. They were very frustrated and wanted to get to Tripoli as quick as possible. But they didn't really understand, again, the tribal influences and the issues that we could have. So I just looked at it in a slightly different approach, and just mainly really having good intelligence sources on the ground. I try and use as many locals as possible for all my tasks. At least 75% is all locals, because they know their land, they know their country better than you do. So, and also show them respect and put food and bread on their table.
I would imagine the biggest, I can't say the biggest skill set, but just being calm, like just being, people are panicking, people are nervous, and you have a plan and you have this system and this training to rely on. I'm also thinking of like somewhere across the world, these buried guns, just randomly, where they are, but they're just there, right? I'm assuming they're out of sight and people aren't walking over them. But when you deal with people in these situations, I would imagine they're just panicking. And how do you calm people down in that scenario?
Yeah, I think it is. It's just, it's the way you come across as well. If you're flustering and you don't have a plan, then that's obviously going to be, they're going to sense that from you. Very contagious. I always talk about positivity being contagious and negativity, but also your aura as well. So for me, I had a plan. They did get nervous. Don't worry. Don't get me wrong. When I turned up on my own and I looked around me, see where the rest of the team was, I said, no, this is it. And so I also think, what I tend to do as well, I try and explain as much to them as possible in regards to the plan. I didn't just drive them out to a safe house 4 hours south of Benghazi. I sort of explained, why we were here and what we were doing as well. So, just keep them fully updated. When you keep them silent and out of the loop, that's when they start asking questions and they start worrying. But they were quite happy. We managed to find a shop, and one of the locals managed to get them some moonshine, and so those guys were happy. But I made sure that we were far enough out of Benghazi that we wouldn't be caught in any sort of crossfire.
Great. So the military, the part of the book that I wanted to ask you a personal question on is when you jumped out of the plane backwards. And it was I think they're called halo jumps, so you're pretty high up. This is something I assume you've done 100 times, jumping backwards, or was that just kind of a one-off?
No. So what we did is, so there's two types of jumping in the special forces that we do. One is the halo, which is a high altitude low opening, which is the skydiving. So you're totally free of lines. The other one is a hey-ho, high altitude, high opening. So you exit the aircraft at 15,000 feet. Your parachute is still attached to the aircraft. And so as you exit, it opens instantaneously for you. And then what that then gives you is 15,000 feet, the limits of oxygen. So you're not on oxygen, and you can travel up to 50 kilometers or 30 minutes to the target area. So it's just another method of insertion. But being in the SBS, or known as the frogmen, when we sort of messing around jumping, if you're the first man, what you tend to do is jump out, turn around, and sort of almost simulate a frog sign to the parachute jump instructors. They hate it. They get upset about it. But
there's good reason why.
Yeah. We used to always do it when we were number one. But actually, I wasn't doing it on this one. I'd done it a couple of times, and then they stuck me in the middle of the group. And it was actually when I was just jumping normally. I exited the aircraft. And as you said, I've done hundreds of these jumps before, and operational jumps. And we were in Oman doing pre-deployment training, ready to go to Afghanistan again. And so there were some young guys who just passed selection, and so they needed to get qualified. And so we were just told, jump on with these guys and get some more training in. But yeah, this is the third jump of the day. As I exited the aircraft, jump out the tailgate, and you should be looking in front of you. But I ended up somehow looking upwards because my heel was caught in the line above my head. And so it was just a freak accident. We have a recording of it. You do it 1,000 times, you never do that again. But my first initial worry was trying to get my leg clear in time before the parachute fully opened. And I couldn't clear it my leg got pulled over my head and to my right. Thankfully my heel did clear from the line and didn't take my leg completely off. But yeah, I'd never experienced pain like it. I was vomiting because of the pain. I was drifting in and out of consciousness because the air was so thin. And then as I was descending, the air was getting a bit better for me. But I could see the rest of the guys in front of me, and I just tried my best just to stay with it.
Did they know anything was wrong? Did they know anything was wrong?
No, we have communications, we have comms between each other. But I made an assessment. There's no point in me telling them that I've hurt my leg because there's actually nothing they can do anyway until you get to the ground. So I just wanted to stay off the net. But then when I landed one-legged. It was a great landing. I'd assessed where the other parachutists had gone, and then just landed one-legged. But unfortunately, the damage sustained ended my career. I tore my ACL, my MCL, my lateral meniscus in my knee, my hamstring, my calf, and my quadricep.
Yeah, I mean, pretty major injury, and you have the presence of mind not to tell anybody until you about to land. Did you? I mean, because I remember in the book you talked about you were worried about falling out of consciousness and floating somewhere where they didn't know where you were. So
we do have trackers on us. Yeah, we will have trackers on us, and so the guys will be able to sort of at least they'll be able to work out your line of exit from the aircraft to there and come look for you. But the first time anyone was aware was when I landed. When I landed, I shouted medic, and one of my friends had landed next to me, and he's like, "Why do you need a medic? That was a great landing." I said, "The exit wasn't as good." And so so they sort of carried me over to the wagon. The doc had a look, and he said, "Right, yeah, you need to go." Got an MRI scan that afternoon, and unfortunately got the bad news.
Well, and then again, the book talks about the rehab was not. I mean, I know a few SEALs here in the U.S. and what it takes for them to go. Their body parts are worth money, right? And you have to go through the process to make sure you're compensated for all the damage done serving your country. And it sounded like you had a very similar experience where it took a while for you to get the proper treatment. How did you deal with that emotionally? Meaning, I'm thinking you're just top 1% of 1% serving your country, and now you're damaged and you're injured. And where if this was like time of war, you would have an immediate medic, an immediate situation, and this took much longer. How did you deal with that emotionally?
Yeah, it was difficult because as you touched on, you've gone from being like a rock star, treated like a rock star, to then, almost like thrown on the pile. And so for me, it was, I love my time in the military. I did 16 years, and all I can talk about is praise for the military. But that last year was difficult for me, and it was just a spiral of errors. They'd lost my med docs when they flew me back from Oman. They then oversaw other things, and so it just started. I was deteriorating as well physically. To add right at the beginning as well, I couldn't fly home straight away because they had the volcanic ash from the Iceland, and so all the aircraft was grounded. So there was those issues as well. So for me, it was like, get me fixed and get me back on operations. But because of the timelines, I just deteriorated, and it didn't really work. And in the end, I actually had to start threatening legal with them, which you'd never imagine. As you said, you're the top 0.1% in the world, and you're threatening legal. So when I did eventually leave the military, again, I didn't get paid out on the right pension I should have done as well. And, it took me 5 years until I won a tribunal hearing against the military, which is shocking to hear, for your listeners. But yeah, I'm not the only one. It seems to be commonplace in there. But yeah, I did go from had a real identity crisis, going from one of the top guys in the world to what is my role now in society? Where do I fit? What is my purpose? And so I got to where I had in the military, because of my physical robustness, I now couldn't even run 100 meters without my knee giving way. So there was a lot of things I was dealing with, as well as Alana being 8 months pregnant with our first child. That was just really starting to compile on me as well about how is there enough work out there? Am I going to be able to support my family? So there's lots of things going on in my head.
Right. So let's go from there, which is can't run 100 meters, to let's break a couple world records and ride a bike farther and faster than anybody ever. So how did you transition from, broken, can't run 100 meters to go do something that, I think if I remember right, you hadn't done much riding ever in your life, and then you want to go ride a bike, something, from the bottom of South America to Alaska. How did that process, what were you thinking? And then we're going to talk through that journey.
Yeah, so really where we came about to that, I got injured and then just spent majority of my time just working. I was so fixated on working and getting money. Lana was my business partner as well. And, she thought I wanted to be going out and I thought that she wanted me to be going out, and we sort of really disconnected and lost a bit of communication. So because of the success of the Benghazi evacuation in 2014, I single-handedly evacuated the Canadian embassy out of Libya on my own, 18 military and 4 diplomats. I came home from that operation and Alana normally launders my clothes, we charge the phone and we get ready for the next phone call. But she highlighted to me that I'd only been home 21 days in a 365-day calendar. And so I had now totally disconnected from society. On reflection, I was trying to match the adrenaline rush that I had when I was in the Special Forces without coming to terms with the fact that I was no longer in there anymore. So we sat down and you've read the book, chapter 16 is called Dead or Divorced. This was the conversation Alana and I were having. If I continued at this pace, I would either be dead or divorced. And so took a sabbatical from the security industry and worked with Alana in the property developing for a few weeks. But that period of time from leaving the military, 5 years to now, I'd neglected my own physical and mental well-being. My injured leg now, the muscle wastage was about 5 pounds on my bad leg. And so I just bought a road bike off Amazon, and I just cycled to and from the office. It's probably about 8 miles each way, but being physically active again, especially getting the cardiovascular, I felt like there was a weight off my shoulders, and so. But you can imagine my story, sat down with Alana in these architects and planners meetings. Actually, I was bottle feeding our second child, Tommy, now, while Alana was doing all the business. And she looked over and she said, she didn't recognize me. I lost that glaze, I was glazed over in my eyes, I had no sort of drive or purpose. And so she said, you need to do something to keep yourself physically and mentally engaged. And so I'd always fancied doing a world record. Alana and I work a lot in the philanthropic area anyway. And so I said, well, I fancy a world record about a month before my 40th birthday. And so I was like, so Alana was like, well, what in? And I said, well, cycling seems to be good. It's not hurting my knee. And so I thought of maybe east to west coast of Scotland. But Alana then found the world's longest road, which runs from southern Argentina to northern Alaska, over 14,000 miles. So it sounds quite arrogant. Having only cycled 20 miles, I applied for the world record with Guinness. And then 6 weeks later, they came back and said, yes, you've been successful on your application. So that's how we ended up doing it. So I wasn't spending more time away from the family, but had to find a challenge that would keep me focused.
So I don't want to ruin the book for people. I think you should go read it. It's a fun read about this bike ride and the challenges, and people here in the least in door space know the Iron. I've heard of the Iron Cowboy, James Lawrence, and I think Alana said you and James, and I guess the 4 of you got together and had some kind of podcast or something. Is that did I remember that right?
That's right. Yeah. We had James on our podcast behind the scene. Yeah, and there was a lot of crossovers and synergies with his story and with mine actually.
And then the support spouses I think probably had a fantastic conversation as well of what it's like to be the supporter of a crazy man.
Yeah. Well, obviously, when you're doing things like that, and also like in the Special Forces, it's quite a selfish occupation because you go away. I mean, your spouses end up running the show, and that's where we've been successful. Alana and I do everything together. So Alana was the campaign director, the fundraiser for the bike ride, and she's not actually joking when she tells people I had the easiest job. I just had to cycle 14,000 miles in 100 days. Her job was a lot harder.
And reading the part about I guess getting you to Panama, where she, and again, I don't want to take away from the story, but getting in a car in was it Florida?
Florida, yeah, she drove. Yeah, so why I decided to, I spoke to the previous record holders, and they'd all started in Alaska and finished in Argentina. But all their issues were in South and Central America. So being a military guy and security guy, well, I thought, why take a gamble in the second half? Why not address those issues early? So what I did is I turned it on its head. I started in Argentina to finish in Alaska. And the only part you can't cycle is the Darien Gap between Panama and Colombia. You have to fly over. But if I was to take a vehicle from Alaska to Argentina, it's not a problem. But coming from upwards, we were having to swap the support vehicles in every country. So Argentina, we're having to swap vehicles into Chile and then doing the same into Peru. And so logistically, we're slowing us down. From a cycling perspective, it was quite good. I had a tailwind all the way through Peru. So from a cycling perspective, it was a good decision. But logistic-wise, that was sort of slowing us up. So Alana and her sponsors, they bought an RV and a 4x4, which was in Fort Lauderdale and was going to get shipped to Panama. And so then once I broke the South America world record in Colombia and flown to Panama, these vehicles would stay with us all the way now to Alaska. So I was in Ecuador about 2 weeks out of breaking that South America world record. And Alana rang me and told me that the vehicles had not been loaded into the shipping container and they're still stuck in port at Fort Lauderdale. But Alana being Alana said, look, leave it with me, I'll sort it. So Alana, her PA, and then two of my friends had foresight and they flew out to Fort Lauderdale and they drove the vehicles 4,000 miles in 8 days from Fort Lauderdale through Mexico, all the way through Central America to Panama. So I broke the world record on the 21st of March, 8 o'clock in the morning in Cartagena. We took a noon flight to Panama and Alana came and her team came in an hour later and handed over the keys. So what's impressive about that story is that everyone would have seen me on the bike ride. You know, I talk about the team behind the scenes that they don't see, you know, so like in the special forces, for every operator, tier one operator to go out the door, it takes 7 other people from the military. And, you know, this was credit to them. If it wasn't for them working behind the scenes, then that world record wouldn't have been as impressive.
Yeah, it's you know, and I met Alana at a mindfulness retreat, right? Where you're talking about mental health and going through all that. And she tells me some of these stories, and I'm listening to, like, again, your resume is so impressive, but I think maybe the toughest battle you had is getting yourself, I guess, from the military back to civilian world. And I know there's people listening that maybe don't have the reason. I was fortunate enough to meet some people who are, you know, tier one operators that are SEALs that educated me on some help I can get from some of the past trauma I had in my life. But nothing compared to, you know, those who serve their country. I want you to talk a little bit about, and for the people who are listening that maybe don't have the resources or the knowledge or the support to people who've done it in front of them, walk through maybe, and I know you raise money for mental health on the ride, and maybe talk about that charity and how you found your journey and how you got to the other side. I think could help a lot of people.
Yeah, so for me, with the bike ride, we'd done a lot of, Alana had done a lot in the philanthropic area, especially me around the veteran community, and then Alana around the human trafficking. And so Prince Harry and I are good friends of 17 years. I actually rang him up and told him about this bike ride. And he was about to launch a campaign called Heads Together with his brother and Kate around mental health. And so I'd seen firsthand, especially in the special forces, mental health issues, but I wasn't aware how big it was throughout the whole of society. You know, be it postnatal depression, young children, teenagers, successful businessmen and women. You know, it affects everyone. You know, just to think, you know, I know because we have a background in special forces, that everyone thinks, you know, we have it worse. I don't think we do. And actually, what I have learned over my time in working in the mental health space is actually 75% of those people in the special forces or the military with PTSD has got nothing to do with their time in the military. It's actually pre-military. So everyone's sort of on a level playing field. And so, yeah, we did the bike ride for that charity. We raised $1.4 million. But I was asked, you know, what was the message I was trying to promote on this challenge? And I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, I looked internally and I said, well, look, physical activity helps your mental state. And I was actually told I couldn't use that back in 2016 because it hadn't been scientifically proven. But I still ignored them anyway, and we carried on promoting that message. And now, you know, it is recognized as one of the coping mechanisms. So mental health for me, you know, we're very UK, very stiff upper lip. You know, my sort of era joining the military, we never even talked about mental health. having gone back now and guest spoke for a few of the military academies in the UK, I now see that they are addressing it a lot better. It used to be very much a taboo. You know, guys would be worried that they wouldn't get promoted or they wouldn't be going on tour. So for me, you know, there's 3 areas of being able to cope with the mental health. There's the communication, which is key. There's the physical activity. And then there's obviously there's the medication areas. You know, obviously now there's new introductions with the plant medicine that seems to be working. But what I tend to find is with the guys and personally is you've gone from, we're very tribal. We like to be in a tribe. You've gone from being in a tribe, you know, having a role, having a purpose, working alongside like-minded individuals to now you're no longer in that tribe and you're trying to get back in. So now where else do I fit? So a lot of guys and girls may find other tribes that they go with, or some of them just may find themselves alone, and they're the ones that really suffer. It's just an element of being able to just keep in touch with everyone. It's very easy nowadays to lose touch with everyone, but it's also very easy to stay in touch as well with social media. So it really is just a balance. And you know, unfortunately, I hear stories of people taking their lives, and it's almost like it's too late. I mean, everyone, did you see any telltale signs? And they're like, no, I didn't see anything. And so, well, I think where I'm getting at with this is that actually there's a lot more focus around it. People are aware of it more often. But yeah, I think for the guys in the special forces community, it's just the fact that they feel that they're no longer part of that tribe, and that's what's difficult. Some don't. Some actually transition really well. You know, some can be quite smooth, some be quite turbulent. You know, thankfully, mine was quite smooth because I had a good support network, as in Alana as well. Whereas the guys that I see are quite turbulent. They may leave the military, they may get divorced. We have a 95% divorce rate in the special forces. So, you know, they're no longer part of a tribe, and they also may no longer be part of their family as well. And it's just then an accumulation of all these little things that get on top of them.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. There's 3 things I want to make sure we cover. We got the Netflix show coming. You have a new crazy challenge that you're going to do, which we'll have you explain. And then I want to talk about, you know, the speaking that you do. So let's go there first. So the speaking that you do, your keynotes or your coaching or whatnot, there are people here listening to this podcast that have seen, you know, all the names in the space. And I think you have a great opportunity with a great story and new content to kind of make a splash. And I think there's information and there's transformation. And I think the life that you've lived could provide people a lot of content that will help them transform their lives in a better place. So, what is your main kind of go-to keynote you like to do, or what kind of groups you like to speak to, or what's your specialty?
Yeah, my groups really vary. They're everything from you know, young children, universities, Fortune 500s, FTSE 100 companies. You know, it's the full spectrum, because my story really covers a lot of takeaway points, some that we've actually touched on now. But the title of one of them actually, you know, I talk about high performance teams. You know, everyone's everyone's fascinated on the mindset of a special forces operator or commander. You know, I call it from the battlefield to the boardroom. You know, what are the takeaway points that you can utilize in your business? But what my favorite one is the unrelenting pursuit of excellence, which is one of the ethoses of the UK Special Forces. And really where I go with that is, you know, I've managed to, you know, we never really touched on it, but my father told me I'd last 2 minutes in the military. I then ended up being a tier 1 operator. Unfortunately, I had a parachuting accident, and then I started all over again in another industry, which was new to me, which is the security sector. I then became number 1 in the security industry for crisis management. And so, you know, really, some people can be successful. Some people say they're lucky, but to then take that into a sport that you've never done before and then become the first man in history to cycle the world's longest road under 100 days, there's obviously a common mindset and a theme. And that's what I'm just really sort of sharing, that, you know, how I work, how I operate. And really, whatever you put your mind to, you can be successful, regardless of age, regardless of your capabilities. So that's why I like about the unrelenting pursuit of excellence, because it's not just special forces, not just in sport. You could be a carpenter, you could be in finance, you know, as long as you have those basics and don't overthink things. You know, I have been referenced as the the British David Goggins, but I actually disagree because I don't swear as much. But yeah, you know what I mean? So there's
I don't think anybody swears as much.
Exactly. So there's a lot of common ground there. So whether you're into sport, endurance sport, whether you're into in the corporate world, or whether you're just starting out as a university student or someone at school, you know, it really just touches on all of them. You know, there's the failures, people telling you can't do it, you know, how you pick yourself up and just keep pushing forward.
Excellent. So it wasn't until recently, this Netflix show that's coming out, this whole time that I've been talking to you and a lot, I'm thinking this Netflix show is about the world record. And it wasn't until you sent me the title of it and I was like, oh shit, it's nothing to do with the world record. And it's even more fascinating. So walk us through this Netflix show. I think in May 22nd it's coming out. I'm assuming that's worldwide. So walk us through what it is, and without giving away give us the trailer.
Yeah. So May 22nd it's coming out. They announced it on the 24th of April, so we now can publicly talk about it. But I think I've been involved with this for the last 3 years, from initial them reaching out to us now finishing. And so the show is called Toughest Forces on Earth. There's 3 hosts. There's myself from UK Special Forces. We have a Navy SEAL, Ryan Bates, and we have a Ranger, Cameron Pfaff. And it's almost like, have you ever seen Top Gear with the 3 hosts, very different personalities? It's a bit like that. And basically, we go around the world and we visit 8 elite forces units, and we showcase what's unique about them, you know, whether geographically where they're placed, what their threats are, their training and everything else. So give us just a little insight. You know, one episode we're in Sweden doing Arctic survival and evasion in the Arctic Circle. You know, the next episode we're in the jungle with the Hunglar police from the Colombians, who teaching us out their tactics to take down the cartel. And then the next one we're in Jordan. You know, it's 3 very different environments, 3 very different threats, whether natural or man-made. So that's what it is. And we get immersed in their training. We do their training with them. And then right at the end, we do a little final mission profile.
Now, physically, is the training, I mean, with the leg that you got, is it something that, I reading and knowing enough about you, like that's probably going to make you try harder. But is it like training as you were when you were younger in the SBS?
Yeah, they didn't go too much in the physical. You know, we had certain timelines as well. It's more so much, you know, what their skills. But yeah, we did do some PT in it, and you know, actually held up really well. You know, strange enough, you know, believe it or not, I'm 47 years old and I was still doing 20 pull-ups with the guys. And so for me, I've managed to maintain my fitness, and I am a competitive person. So I did make sure that I was in good shape when I started.
Yes. Competitive is the first half of the book, I would think. Okay, and that airs on the 22nd, and this podcast should be coming out just before that, so it'd be great. Next World Challenge. Now, I grew up on the Pacific Ocean, and if I understand this correctly, you're going to row a boat from all the way from the top, from Vancouver down to Baja.
Mexico, yeah. So for me, as I like to take a sport that I've never done before, you know, so I've enjoyed cycling. And then I take a sport and then just find one of the biggest challenges out there. So for me, I've done the road. I wanted to then do water. And actually, what's unique about this one, Alana gets slightly upset with the bike ride because, you know, when people sort of overlook it slightly because they know that I'm tier 1 special forces, they're like, well, of course he can do it. But I know that 99.9% of the special forces community can't do that bike ride. And so she gets a little bit angst about it. So she's going to be my rowing partner with this. And Alana, as you met, she's never done any physical activity before in her life. You know, she's just actually, so it's almost taken a blank canvas, but, you know, instilling that mindset and that stuff I was talking about earlier into this challenge. And originally we were looking at, you know, there's a famous row from Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge, which goes from the Canary Islands over to the Caribbean. They've just done one last year, actually, here in the US. So you'll see more of it here in the US. So they're ocean rowing boats, but it was from Monterey to Hawaii they rowed, but they're not doing it as couples. So Alana then found Drake's Passage, which is where I started my bike ride to Antarctica. It's only 600 miles. But actually, then Alana then realized she's absolutely useless in the cold. So I don't know why she even chose that one. So we're working with a good friend of ours. He's the vice president of the Ocean Rowing Society. And we said, look, what hasn't been done yet? I like to do a world first. And he said, no one's actually rode the west coast of America. I was like, let's lock it in. So we're going from Vancouver Island, start in Canada, and we're going to go down to Baja in Mexico. And the bike ride we touched on was for mental health. Alana, works a lot in the human trafficking area. This campaign is going to be around ocean conservation, making awareness of the coastlines and everything else that's going along with it. So we're now chatting to a couple of the non-profits, Surf Riders Foundation will be one of them, and a couple of more. And it really is just to raise awareness of the ocean conservation.
How far is the row?
We're still working it out where the start point and the finish point is. Yeah, but I think it's about between 12 and 1,400 miles.
And then how far off the coastline?
Well, this is a great thing about this. So when you're doing, like, for example, I touched on Monterey to Hawaii, you have to go all the way out there. It's up to us how far we go. I reckon we'll be within 3 and 5 miles of the coastline. We'll just handrail that coastline down. Navigation wise, ours will be more difficult than the others because obviously we've got shipping lanes and other considerations to think about. But then when you're talking about more safety at sea on the ocean, we're not that far, if there is an issue. So, but the great thing about that, more from a media and talking points, is as we're coming down, there's so many, chatting with the Surf Riders Foundation the other day, there's so many projects and so many things to highlight along the whole west coast of America that each day we'll be passing something.
Great. And then how big's the boat?
So the boat, how big are the boats? They vary in size. We're going for a 2-man one. I'll have to send you a screenshot, maybe share it with the audience on the day. But they're not like your typical rowing boats. They have a cabin on each end. One where you sleep. There's a toilet in there. There's also where you have your communications equipment. You have your mapping as well. They're quite large. And obviously, the centerpiece between the cabins is where you guys end up doing the rowing. But there's other courses that we need to do as well, other than just doing the rowing. Getting the rowing in is, more those VHF radios, those safety issues while at sea.
Is there a support boat with you?
No, we don't need a support boat for this one.
You don't need a support. You don't need a support boat.
No, not on this one because we're not that far off the mainland. They actually don't have support boats when they do Monterey to Hawaii. We did if we were going to do the Drake's Passage from Argentina to Antarctica, we would have needed a support vessel for that one. And again, that was one of the issues with that. You needed almost like 18 months notice for that, which was sort of delaying us as well.
That's great. All right, Dean, we're going to wrap things up here. Now, to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you for either supporting the row or for a speaking or coaching gig? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably my website, which is deanstott.com. Everything we talked about will be on there and can direct you to certain pages. Okay. I do have social media. I'm on Instagram as Dean Stott and just gone back onto X or Twitter at Dean Stott SBS.
Now, are you handling your own social media?
I am at the moment. Yeah, I am. And again, like social media to me is very new. We only set up social media when I did the bike ride, because when I was in the special forces, it was very much a taboo. But I'm now starting to see the pros and cons of social media and why you actually need it. And I now get sponsored by some brands as well. So I need to be present on there.
Great. Hey, Dean, it was great to have you on today. I wish you the best of luck, and I can't wait to watch the Netflix. I do, I'm a little bit of an introvert. So once my kids and family go to bed, like from like 9:30 to 11 o'clock is like my recharge quiet time. I'm watching Full Swing right now about the PGA. So I'm looking I should be finished with that about the time this Netflix series comes out. It'd be great to watch.
Just watch it with your kids. It's family friendly. There's no explicits at all. Cut all them out.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.